For Florida State to win in 2026, decisions about the transfer portal need to be made right now.
You are Locked On Seminoles, your daily podcast on the Florida State Seminoles. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Back into Locked On Seminoles. I am your host, Brian Smith, longtime college football recruiting analyst. Thank you for making Locked On Seminoles your first listen each and every day, right here on the nation's #1 podcasting network, Locked On. We're going to be discussing several different things with Florida State today, including the game against Florida. A couple of key areas to discuss in that game that honestly give Florida State an edge. The Gators are even worse than you thought. We're also going to be talking about Florida State's decisions in terms of trying to keep their players and who might be trying to poach Florida State's players. I have some insights on some very nasty stuff that is going on in college football, but it's the truth, and that's what I'm here to spill on Locked On Seminoles. And to start, the number one thing that you need to know on this show today is really the most important question of the entire offseason now that Mike Norvell has been announced as coming back. Is Florida State going to make the right decisions with how they spend their money with the transfer portal? They've got a bunch of questions. And number one overall, if you don't take anything else from this podcast, note the following. It starts at quarterback. Everything starts at quarterback for Florida State, for Oklahoma, for USC, for Michigan, or anybody else. Are they bringing Tommy back? Are they bringing Gus back? I guess is part of it as well. But overall, are you going to go out and get a quarterback? You need to make that decision now, because the money that goes into that, plus the decision-making at other positions, how you formulate everything, starts at the quarterback position. And then it trickles down. How much money can you give Chroma to keep other players? Everything starts with the quarterback position for the Florida State Seminoles. So let's talk about it. What would you do? Would you bring Gus back? Because his offense is very specific. If he wants to leave and he gets another job, then the choice is made for you. But do you want to bring Gus back? Because I can just about guarantee you, knowing Gus, he's going to want to bring Tommy back. That's his style of quarterback. That's his guy. Just from running Locked On Seminoles the last couple of years, Florida State fans are not very shy. They're nice people by and large, but they're not very shy, especially at quarterback, because the history for the Florida State Seminoles at quarterback is quite impressive. Now, it's a bit up in the air. Tommy's good at times, and sometimes he's really good, but he's also very injury prone. Part of it is his size, but as much, if not more, of his concern with injury is predicated on the offensive philosophy of one Gus Malzahn. If you're going to play quarterback under Gus, you're going to run some more, and you're going to get hit a lot. Tommy's probably to the point where that's just not feasible anymore. He's 195 to 200 pounds. He's built like a running back, not a 6'5", 235-pound pocket passer. They need to mitigate hits on him, even if he does come back. Again, that's not Gus's style. If it was up to me, I would switch. And I like Gus. I do. But I'm not going to sit here and lie to anybody. It didn't work this year because by game 3, Tommy was already banged up. Then when he got to the Virginia game, the Miami game, on and on and on, you could tell he didn't want to run quite as much. He didn't have the same burst for much of that same time period. And finally, teams noticed. It changes how you play defense. Teams didn't have to come after him in the same capacity, spy the quarterback a little more, not send as many blitzes, made it a little easier. And Tommy has struggled, especially on the road, as we've talked about here on Locked On Seminoles, throwing the football with accuracy. Part of that, again, it's because he's beat up. Watch his throwing motion over and over again, play to play. He's not healthy. His motion's not consistent. That offense, to me, while the style in general is fine, it has to be utilized in a much different way. Quarterback just can't run that much. It cannot be a position where that takes on that much of a hammering like Tommy Castellanos has gone through this season. So I ask again, would you go out and do something different at quarterback? Because if you are, you're also essentially saying we got to change coordinators. This is where the rubber meets the road. That's your confidant, that's your OC, and this school, let's be honest, they're trying to be cheap about spending money. Gus does not take no very well, I'm going to guess. He's been a head coach for a long time. I don't know how it's going to work, but if it was me, I would go a different route. And if Gus didn't want to do it, I would part ways with it. But again, that's an administrative point of view. That's not, I wouldn't have full autonomy on that if I was Mike Norvell. How would you do it? Again, I would go another direction. You need a quarterback that can run some. I'm steadfast with that. I'm okay with that. But I want 5 to 8 carries in a game, half of those being because I escaped the pocket and there was 5 yards sitting there for free. Let's go get them. 2nd and 5, stay ahead of the chains. Quarterback counter, quarterback power, etc. over and over again, not so much. Tommy, to his credit and his detriment, also is a guy that is just ultra competitive, put himself into some of those hits. They didn't tell him to take. That's just what Tommy does. And I said that in fall camp. They must get away from that kind of quarterback. They need a guy that'll run, but is much smarter about not taking big shots. Just can't happen, man. Just cannot happen. So what would I do? I would go out and get a quarterback that can throw it. I'd spend money. And to be clear, Tommy made just under $1 million roughly, I guess, this year, something like that. That was a report. How accurate that is, I don't know. But with the way the market is, and remember, there's only one transfer portal window now. It's in the winter. So under no circumstance are you doing anything other than guessing. Every single school, there's 136, they're all guessing if they go after quarterbacks because you do not get to see your young guy go through spring and then decide, oh, you know what, we need a quarterback. You're 100% guessing. So this is tough because Florida State, again, they're trying to be cheap with what they're doing. That's pretty obvious. They're not going to be able to do that. 2 reasons. 1, there's no spring window. That's just fact. And number 2, I hate saying this, but I can see it coming. Why would I go to your school? This school over here is offering just as much. They're winning more. Florida State's going to have to overpay. So if it's a quarterback for $1.5 million, it's going to be 1.8, 2 mil, something like that. That's coming too at every position. The quarterback's expensive anyway. If they want to go big dog, they want to go big game hunting, they're probably going to pay 2 mil for a quarterback or more. Do we really think they're going to do that? Again, everything's got to go through the administration in some capacity, I would assume, but it's not like Norvell is going to explain in a press conference on National Signing Day, which is a week from today when this podcast comes out. How do they do that? Like, do they just get the money? That's a great question for somebody to ask at the signing day press conference. Does he get to allocate how he sees fit just out of a pot? Or is it going to be kind of like Napier? He had to go to the booster for each guy. It was a weird deal in Florida. That'd be awkward. If I was Norvell, I'd be like, pound sand, I'm out of here. Got to have some autonomy. But after the way Norvell is coached, maybe they don't want to do that. Regardless, they've got to figure out something at quarterback, even if it's a backup for Tommy, because Sperry may not be ready. I would love for him to get a shot in spring. You should absolutely give him a shot. But what if he's terrible? You don't know. What little he's shown, he's been pretty good. But he hasn't been a starter. He hasn't been a guy under the gun. I get it. So minimum, I think they need to spend about $1 million on a quarterback, somebody that is top 10 in the portal this offseason, maybe higher. And it needs to be somebody that has the common sense to not only pick up the offense, it needs to be the common sense to not take hits. Because if Gus comes back, he's going to ask him to run. There's got to be a meeting of the minds there. And if not, I still don't think it's going to work. In today's era, this offense, it takes too many hits. That is my new opinion on it. I like the offense in general, but Gus wants to run the quarterback too much. Just my opinion. So if he wants to run him 3 or 4 times a game, whatever. That's not who Gus has been. He has to prove to me otherwise that he can be ultra successful without the quarterback run being a primary part of the offense. Here are a few other questions that I have regarding the portal this offseason that are very important. Style of quarterback. If you do bring in somebody besides Tommy, maybe it is somebody that's more pro, maybe not. What about the opportunity to take 1 or 2 quarterbacks? If Tommy leaves, would you take 2? Maybe take a couple of guys that are pretty good, let them battle? How would you do that? If you're going away from the quarterback discussion, are you going to spend in the right way around him? meaning they got some. I've talked about this before. I'm going to talk about this on almost every show between now and the end of next offseason. They've got enough young offensive linemen. Take some of them and put them through spring. At least minimum 3 of the young linemen need to start. You got to go through it for the long term. Grit your teeth, deal with it, make it work to the best of your ability. If you take 1 or 2 portal guys, whatever. But it should be primarily high school driven O-line at Florida State from 2026 on, period. No excuses. They've actually hit on some pretty good players in terms of talent. Time to coach them up. Let's see what happens there. And then the big question that I want to get to is about the total portal spending. This is a subject that has come up a little bit with some other schools, and I want to delve into this. This is really important. I don't know what Florida State's going to do, but we're going to get into that next. Are they going to spend enough? That's the teaser here. Are they going to spend enough on the portal this offseason? That is next on Locked on Seminoles. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. Keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. I'll admit, NBA games are notorious for fourth quarters being pretty topsy-turvy. Team could be up 15, 17 points, and then you turn around, you have a quick phone conversation with your mom, your girlfriend, your buddy, and all of a sudden it's a 4-point game and there's a minute 30 left. That can be pretty exciting. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Head to FanDuel.com, sign up, and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Thank you once again for making Locked On Seminoles your first listen each and every day right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm Brian Smith, longtime college football recruiting analyst. Please become an everydayer if you have not already. Like and subscribe to Locked On Seminoles. So here's the big question. I've mentioned this, but I really want to dive into it. Is Florida State going to quote unquote overspend? It's not really overspending, but it's overspending based on the NCAA rules, which are flat out not remotely in any way, shape, or form taken into consideration by the NCAA. How many teams have got in trouble for going over? Do you think Texas Tech pays attention to the 20 million rule? No. It's 20, 21 million, somewhere in there. Absolutely not. But do you think Florida State's going to try to use that as an example of how they can save money? Well, taking your money and donations, taking your ticket money? Probably. If they do not spend high end, and I know enough NIL people, and I'm in that space myself too, talking to recruits and talking to people, their agents, I'm going to know. If Florida State's cheap, I'm going to tell all y'all. I'm not going to be shy. I do not care. I'm going to let it rip. They've said open-endedly in that message to the entire Florida State faithful, they're going to spend to make Florida State a championship team. Prove it. This 20 million area, you're not even in the stratosphere with where you need to be. Not even close. If they're spending in that area, they can be a nice 7-5, 8-4 football team next year, year after. If you want to really win, and I mean really win, especially with where this roster is now, 30 million is the bottom end. Bottom. Are they willing to do that? I don't think so. But I have no way to know until we get to that point. I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt until then. We're going to find out piece by piece, quarterback, D-line, corner, maybe a boundary receiver. Deuce probably going to leave. Will Florida State go out and spend on the quote-unquote premier positions? If not, it's pretty simple. Florida State will be right about where they are right now. 5-6, headed into the game against Florida next year to be at Doak. And I'm going to bring up this very podcast. They didn't spend. That's where they're at. Maybe they're not going to spend because they think they just got to do this for several years to eat Norvell's contract. That ain't going to work. Those same people making those decisions will be out. Again, bottom end, remember this number, $30 million. And I don't think they'll sniff it. That's my opinion. And anybody saying, Brian, that's illegal. Everybody that wins is cheating. And I mean cheating on that number. Texas Tech is way north of that. They're not in the stratosphere of 30 million. They overpaid in ways that it's just unbelievable. You may not be Texas Tech and they don't have a Cody Campbell running around Florida State, but that doesn't mean they can't go out and do something. There has to be a middle ground there. If not, that letter was more fraudulent than I thought it was. Again, they weren't asked to do this. The administration offered with multiple people saying, in essence, we're going to go out and compete for championships. MONEY. Spend it. It's called money. Spend a lot of it because you've got to retain your roster first and foremost. Probably need at least one quarterback in some capacity, whether Tommy comes back and gets a waiver or not. And then you've got 5 linemen that you're losing. You're losing Big Darrell. The linebacker situation's kind of iffy. Maybe you get everybody to come back in the secondary that's eligible. Kai Bates, KJ, Edwin Joseph. I don't know which guys are or are not going to come back. That's hard to say. But DB is probably going to be expensive. You're losing Jerry. Jabril Rawls, will he be back? Will he transfer? Will he go to the pro? There's a lot of questions to ask there. And then again, Deuce is gone. Boundary receivers are uber expensive because there are so few of them. Boundary receiver means big, big, big playmaker. Florida State's known for it, but 6'3" guys and above don't grow on trees. They hit the home run with Deuce, 6'6", 220 pounds, and he's been a guy. Absolutely. But you also got to retain Micahi because I guarantee you people are coming after him right now. Miami, Alabama, Georgia, they don't care. They're coming after him. 100%. You think Lane's going to care if he takes the Florida job? He'll try to go get Danzy. And guess who his second pick was out of high school? You guessed it, Florida Gators. Could you imagine what Micahi Danzy would do in Lane Kiffin's offense? Yeah, that would not be a good look for him to go to FSU and then turn around, transfer to Florida. But if you don't compensate him the way he wants, not the way you want, but the way he wants, that could happen. This is the game of college football. Ugly. I don't like it any more than you, but you have to find a way to make it work. To that end, Florida State has a couple more options. The Seminoles could go after another JUCO player or two. That's a way to kind of supplement. And of course, there's traditional high school recruiting. This isn't all just portal money. As I noted on yesterday's Locked On Seminoles, you have to spend accordingly, and they need to shift some of their money to the high school ranks. That hasn't changed. But the players they do go after in the portal, they can't just mess around. They've got to have a genuine plan. Again, starts at quarterback, and then that matriculates down through your roster. But make no mistake, it's going to be expensive, especially with the O-line. They're losing 5. The guys they do get, 1 or 2 that they should bring in, probably going to be very pricey. It's just the way that is. It's probably not going to change. And one last thing, there's always the opportunity to retain as many players as possible and build the right way, just with continuity. If you're going to spend a little extra money that way, I will never complain. I think that's the best way to do it. Ohio State does it predominantly. Notre Dame does it. Penn State, Texas, teams that have been deep into the playoffs, teams that have been ranked high, they've done it that way. So there's a reason to go that route. When we come back, we're going to talk about a couple areas that Florida State actually has an advantage on the Florida Gators. That is next here on the Portal Podcast. Today's show is brought to you by Game Time. College football is as exciting as ever, and especially with the playoff run being so crazy, the portal coming up, you got National Signing Day. There's all kinds of exciting things to go with college football, but the actual games, there's nothing quite like those either. Tailgates, rivalries, the energy in the stand, there's nothing like going to a college football game. Let's be real, though, getting tickets can sometimes be more of a battle than the actual game itself. Endless queues, hidden fees, jumping out at you at checkout. That's why I use Game Time, and you should too. It gives you, the fan, the advantage with the app. All you have to do is download it today, and it's the easy way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices. No surprise fees. What you see is what you get. So if you wanted to go down to Gainesville and see the Florida State Seminoles play, you can check it out. And the best thing about the app, click on it, type in Florida State, it'll pull up the games. Once you're into the app and you pick the game, you can click on a seat and see your seat view right there from your phone. No ifs, no ands, no buts. You can see where you would be looking at the game right there from that seat. It's a really cool feature by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code Locked On College for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, promo code Locked On College for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download the Game Time app today. The Florida Gators are absolutely, unequivocally terrible on third down. They're giving up 43% on third downs. And with Florida State's skill position talent, that's going to be very interesting. I said yesterday, and I'll say again all week, the more motivated team / more physical team will probably win. But that's how you get into manageable third downs in the first place. It's one of the reasons Florida has struggled. 43%. Team as talented as Florida? Yeah, that should be the case. And here's a really prime case for why FSU could take advantage. Florida majors in defensive busts in the second. Their safeties are as confused as any safeties in college football. I have no idea why. It is not a lack of talent for UF. You go look at the recruiting rankings for the guys that are back there. They were all offered by Florida State and Miami, etc. Like they're elite guys. They're not picking up the scheme, or the scheme's not being presented, or whatever. So not only should Florida State technically be able to attack that secondary and the second level as well, linebacker. Think about it. Wheel routes to Chroma, wheel routes to Jalen, Squirrel, whoever they want to run. Florida State's been successful with that. And we know they're going to try to get Deuce as well as Micahi down the field. Do not be surprised if Florida State scores on a 3rd and 8 post route. Why? Because if Micahi Danzy is running down the middle of the field wide open, it's pretty easy. Florida has been known to give up those kinds of plays. It should be pretty straightforward that you've got to test them, and Gus definitely will. But all the eye candy that he uses with motions and stuff, I'd go a little slower and attack Florida from that vantage point. See what they do pre-snap. It may not even be that complex. Go in motion. Somebody does or doesn't come out with the right leverage. That can be the difference between a touchdown and a 4-yard gain. On the other side of the ball, Florida is just flat out prone to the most stupid penalties and turnovers. This is one of those games that while Tony White's defense has taken a lot of slack, if it is patient, big if, there's a chance not only to stymie the Gators, it can turn the game on its head. The key to the Florida State defense, based on what White has done at previous stops, Syracuse, Nebraska, etc., you've really got to earn the field. They do a pretty good job with pass defense, and they don't have a ton of balls go over their head in the last several games. So Florida's going to try to throw the deep ball. It's DJ's biggest strength, but he's not patient. He doesn't read defenses that well. He forces it into tight windows. And while the Noles don't have a quote-unquote dominant pass rush, the Desir twins, Big Darrell, probably a little more blitzing, and you're going to save a few things for the Gators. I think he's going to be placed into a couple of situations more than he can handle in terms of throwing the football to the wrong team. If he doesn't have at least one pick in this game, I will be truly shocked. He's been a turnover machine, even with Jaden Ball in the backfield, which is mind-blowing. Jaden Ball is one of the better running backs in college football, despite being behind a so-so offensive line. Outside of Jake Slaughter, they don't have a dude, and he's been banged up. So with that being stated, FSU has a chance to A, get the Gators behind the sticks, B, mitigate the value of Jaden Ball, and C, place DJ Lagway into, for whatever reason, I still don't understand this because he's ultra talented, their quarterback into 3rd and 5 and longer, where he seems to panic with trying to force the ball into spots that he shouldn't. I'm not saying Florida State's going to win this game. I still haven't picked a team, but that's the one area. If you can get them behind the sticks, it's just like taking candy from a baby. They will make errors. Patience, patience, patience. If you tackle well, big if for Florida State, and you make them go the length of the field. Slow, but I don't like this style of defense, but against Florida, I get it. Make them earn it all the way down the field, 10-plus play drives, they shoot themselves in the foot over and over again. They only average 20 points a game. Florida, it's amazing. Florida State has a chance to really cause some problems. I think that's a really big factor. And especially if you can do well within the first 5 to 10 minutes of the ball game, get in DJ's head if you get a pick, or even if you have a pick that should have been, and the ball goes to the ground off a deflection that should have been picked, you're still in his head. He's, oh boy. Then he starts hesitating, waiting too long. That's when the sacks happen. Their offensive line sucks, period. It's not very good. FSU should be able to get after them with 4, at least a little bit more than they normally would. And again, Mandrell and Darrell are playing better. And do not forget about Big Darrell Jackson in the middle, James Williams, etc. A few corner blitzes here or there. I can see a few balls going up for grabs before the end of the first quarter. The key is going to be tackling Jaden Ball. That is not an easy task. If you don't bring your tackling ability to this game, it'll be 2nd and 4 all day, then all bets are off. He's a dude. That is a pure, no doubt about it, starting running back in the NFL, in my opinion, and he's only a sophomore. You must be ready to tackle him from play one. Physical, downhill, do my job, run gap fits. I know this is all boring, but Jaden Ball will find the hole. He's very intelligent, has natural vision, and he is a powerful runner. One guy just arm tackling him, good luck. He'll power through that. Very good player. If they can keep him to 3 yards or less per carry on first down, it's not going to work for Florida. I have zero faith in DJ Lagway at this point, and I doubt their coaching staff has a lot of belief either. He just throws the ball into stupid spots. At this point, it's on DJ. Let's see what Florida State can do on first downs, because if they're even decent at stopping the run on first down, Florida's going to be in trouble. But that's a big if. With that, thank you once again for making Locked On Seminoles your first listen each and every day right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. We will see you again tomorrow.